This is the Terracotta Army, 8,000 warriors buried over 2,000 years ago. One of the greatest wonders of the world.
AI has just finished scanning the Terracotta Army, and the results shocked every expert who saw them.
What we've discovered so far through these 3D models, these warriors seem to be very individual in the same way as a typical human population.
What was expected to be routine analysis instead revealed something so disturbing it could change history itself. The soldiers no longer look like silent guardians of the past. They now stand as a warning, pointing to secrets buried with China's first emperor that were never meant to be uncovered. The question is no longer just what was built. It is what was hidden and what it cost to hide it. If this is the kind of history nobody taught you, subscribe, because what AI found underneath this army is something nobody was ready for. The accidental discovery that started it all. In the spring of 1974, farmers in Lintong district outside Xi'an were digging a well during a drought. Their shovels hit something hard. Fragments came up, shaped like arms, like armor, like a human face staring blankly through 2,000 years of soil. They had no idea what they were holding. Nobody did. What archaeologists eventually uncovered beneath that field was an army. Over 8,000 life-sized clay soldiers standing in precise battle formation. 670 horses, 130 chariots, every single face unique, every soldier different. An entire military force, frozen in clay, sealed underground, and left to wait in absolute darkness for over 2 millennia. The world called it one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history. A wonder, a masterpiece. But AI has just shown us what it actually was. And wonder is not the word that comes to mind. The man who built it. To understand what AI found, you first need to understand who built this and why. Qin Shi Huang was China's first emperor. By 38 years old, he had conquered every rival kingdom and unified China under a single rule for the first time. The methods he used are not the kind that get taught in school. His generals buried surrendered soldiers alive, hundreds of thousands of them, to break the will of the kingdoms that followed. He burned books that challenged his authority, and according to historical accounts, had scholars buried alive to silence dissent. Entire cities that resisted were massacred. Alliances were signed and broken the moment they stopped being useful. In his final years, he became consumed by one obsession. He did not want to die. He sent expeditions across the seas, searching for an elixir of immortality. He never slept in the same palace 2 nights in a row. Alchemists fed him mercury compounds, trying to make him live forever. The mercury poisoned him instead, rotting his mind from the inside while he continued issuing orders and executing anyone who failed him. The Terracotta Army was built during these years, 8,000 soldiers to guard him in death, built by people who would not be allowed to leave when the work was done. That detail matters, because AI just found the evidence. They were never gray, and that is the first unsettling thing. The first thing the AI revealed seems almost innocent compared to what followed, but it set the tone for everything that came after. Because the first thing AI showed us is that we have been looking at this army wrong for 50 years. Using hyperspectral imaging, cameras that see far beyond the wavelengths visible to the human eye, the AI detected chemical traces of paint that had faded from the surface of the statues centuries ago. Cinnabar red, malachite green, azurite blue, charcoal black. These soldiers were not gray. They were never gray. The AI reconstructed their original appearance. What appeared on screen in front of the research team were not clay statues. They were soldiers, vivid, painted, alarmingly lifelike soldiers with colored armor, detailed faces, and eyes that looked ready to move. The team described the experience as deeply unsettling, not because the colors were beautiful, because the soldiers suddenly felt alive. 2,000 years in the ground, and they were staring back. This army was never designed to be archaeological. It was designed to be real, and AI just made it real again. The fingerprints of men who never came home. As the AI continued scanning the figures, it began finding something pressed into the clay itself. Fingerprints, thousands of them, different on every statue, preserved perfectly for over 2,000 years. Every print belonged to a different worker, the people who physically shaped these soldiers. Their hands are still here, in the clay, long after everything else about them is gone. The AI also detected variations in the clay mixture across different figures, showing how the workforce changed as the project expanded. Early statues were shaped by skilled artisans working carefully with consistent material. Later statues showed cruder clay from different sources, rougher technique, the marks of workers conscripted under pressure, peasants, prisoners, people who had never shaped clay in their lives, forced into service as the emperor's deadline approached. And then there is what ancient texts record about what happened when the work was finished. According to Sima Qian's records of the Grand Historian, written a century after the tomb was sealed, the craftsmen who built the inner chambers were locked inside when construction was complete. They knew too much. They were never allowed to leave. For 2,000 years, that was just a story, something written in an ancient book that nobody could prove. The fingerprints in the clay are proof that real human hands built this place. The question AI is now helping to answer is how many of those hands were still attached to living people when the doors were sealed. Hidden chambers nobody was supposed to find. Ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry were run across sections of the site that had never been excavated. The raw data was fed into AI systems trained to identify patterns in underground density and magnetic variation. What came back from beneath Pit 2 was not what anyone expected. Straight corridors, rectangular chambers, enclosed rooms, too organized to be natural, too deliberate to be accidental. Structures built underground and then buried, in areas the official archaeological maps show as empty ground. Some of these passages extended far beyond the known boundaries of the site. The layout matched nothing in any burial design from the period. It looked less like a tomb and more like a command structure. A military installation, recreated underground, designed to function, not just to impress. Ancient texts had described the emperor's tomb as a miniature empire. Palaces, government offices, rivers of mercury flowing through underground channels. For years, historians read this as poetic exaggeration, the kind of hyperbole ancient writers used to describe powerful rulers. AI is suggesting it was a literal description. The Terracotta Army may not be symbolic. It may be a full-scale recreation of the actual Qin military system, the real chain of command, the real formations, the real structure of the empire that conquered China, rebuilt in clay and buried so it could keep working in death. That is not a monument. That is something else entirely. The writing nobody had read, and what it said. For decades, small markings had been noticed on some of the figures. Tiny etchings in the clay on feet, torsos, armor plates. Everyone assumed they were workshop labels, production numbers, the administrative marks of a large manufacturing operation. The AI read them for the first time. They were not production labels. They were military records, unit designations, battalion identifiers, rank inscriptions, the names of individual artisans, and buried inside the data, references to units that do not exist in the known archaeological record, labels for entire soldier groups that have never been found. They are still down there, hundreds, possibly thousands of terracotta soldiers still buried in undocumented pits beneath a site that has been excavated for 50 years, waiting in total darkness, still in formation, still carrying their weapons. The researchers who heard this finding described feeling a chill. They had spent careers on this site, and the AI had just told them that what they found, the 8,000 soldiers, the horses, the chariots, was not the whole army. It was not even close. The weapons were real, and that changes everything. Among the figures, archaeologists have always found bronze weapons, swords, spears, crossbow mechanisms. The assumption for 50 years was that these were ceremonial replicas, props, realistic-looking burial objects with no actual function. The AI looked closer. Tiny nicks and scratches on the blade surfaces, consistent with actual combat. Polish marks from repeated sharpening. Wear patterns that showed these weapons had been used, maintained, and used again before being stripped from the living and buried with the dead. And then there was the coating. Many of the blades were covered in a rust prevention treatment, chromium oxide, so effective that the metal has survived 2,000 years underground in near-perfect condition. The problem is that chromium plating was not developed in the Western world until the 20th century. How a Qin dynasty weapons manufacturer in 200 BC was applying a functionally identical treatment remains an open question. But the real implication is darker than the chemistry. Qin Shi Huang took real weapons, battle-tested, blood-stained, stripped from the hands of living soldiers, and buried them to arm his ghost army. he was not building a monument. He was preparing for a war he believed was coming in the afterlife, against enemies he had already defeated in life and still did not trust to stay dead. What was found beneath the soldiers? This is the finding that silenced the room. In several locations across the site, directly beneath and beside the terracotta soldiers, the AI ground scans flagged density anomalies that did not match any known figure or architectural feature. Irregular shapes, organic signatures in the soil consistent with decomposed material. When those locations were carefully excavated, what was found confirmed what the ancient texts had recorded for 2,000 years and nobody had wanted to fully believe: human remains. Young adults, some possibly in their 20s. The bones were not arranged with care or ceremony. They were scattered, disorganized, in positions that told a story no one wanted to hear. These were not people who were buried after a natural death. The positioning, the age, the location directly within the military complex, it matched what ancient accounts described as ritual killing and forced burial. Workers sealed inside to protect the secrets. Attendants sacrificed to serve the emperor in death. Human beings treated as construction material for an immortality project. For 2,000 years, this was a story in a book. Now it has bones. And the AI says there are more anomalies still in the ground. The general who was never supposed to be found. Near the central axis of Pit 1, an area considered completely excavated, AI ground scans detected faint density patterns beneath a collapsed section of Earth that matched no known figure in the official record. The team dug carefully, and what came out of the ground had never been seen in 50 years of excavation. A figure taller than every soldier around it, broader, armored differently, with chest plates and layered segments of a complexity far beyond infantry rank. Belt buckle and headgear carrying insignia that, according to Qin military records, marked one rank specifically, general. Researchers cross-referenced everything: the armor style, the insignia, the size, the location within the pit. One name kept coming back: General Meng Tian, the most feared commander in the Qin Empire, the man who built sections of the Great Wall and led the campaigns that secured China's northern border through methods that made even other Qin generals uncomfortable. If the identification holds, this is the first time a specific named historical individual has been found inside the Terracotta Army. Not a symbolic figure, not a type, a real person, recreated in clay, standing guard over the emperor who sent thousands of people to their deaths to build his eternal kingdom. A few feet away from the figure lay the shattered remains of a chariot. The AI reconstruction team pieced it together digitally. The axles showed stress fractures from long use. The wheel surfaces carried terrain abrasion from real ground. The harness fittings bore scrape marks from years of actual load. This chariot had been to war. It was not built for burial. It was taken, stripped from service, and sealed underground with the general who rode it. The tomb that has never been opened. Everything AI has found, the hidden chambers, the unread inscriptions, the real weapons, the human remains, the buried general, is from around the edges of the site, the outer pits, the areas that could be safely excavated. At the center of all of it sits a mound of earth 250 meters high. Beneath it, according to ancient texts and modern sensor data, lies the actual tomb of Qin Shi Huang. It has never been opened. Soil tests above the mound show mercury levels in the ground hundreds of times above normal, consistent with the ancient description of rivers of liquid mercury flowing through the burial chambers. Enough mercury to make excavation genuinely dangerous. Enough to suggest that whatever is inside has been preserved, sealed, and waiting for 2,000 years exactly as the emperor intended. Ancient texts describe what is in there: palaces recreated in miniature, maps of the stars on the ceiling, crossbow traps set to fire automatically at anyone who enters. Treasures beyond anything found in the outer pits. Nobody has gone in. Nobody knows what is actually there. What AI has found around this tomb, in the parts that could be examined, is already rewriting what we know about the ancient world. The weapons were real. The soldiers are still down there. The human remains confirm what history recorded and people hoped was exaggeration. If this is what surrounds the tomb of China's first emperor, what is inside it? That question has waited 2,000 years. It is still waiting. In 1 year of AI scanning, researchers learned more about the Terracotta Army than in the previous 50 years of excavation. Real weapons, human remains, a general nobody knew was buried there, and thousands of soldiers still waiting underground in pits that have never been found. The central tomb has never been opened, and every new AI finding makes that sealed door feel more significant and more unsettling. What do you think is inside it? Drop your answer in the comments. Next week, the Great Pyramid. AI thermal imaging has found hidden chambers inside it that no living person has ever entered. Subscribe so you do not miss it. See you then.